hope you're feeling groovy as we're about to review another movie. Today, I have special guest on, John Wayne S. I assume because your name's John Wayne that in school people probably compared you a lot to John Wayne, the actor.
Yes, they did. Matter of fact, it happens every single day. People ask me something about it, they have a joke. Most I get is that your parents must really like John Wayne movies. I get that a lot. But the truth be told, John Wayne name was not John Wayne. The studio changed his name. His name was Merriam, and they couldn't have a cowboy that name, so they changed his name to John Wayne. And also too, I have two other people named John Wayne too, and my great grandfather's name was John Henry. So we come from this long line of Johns, and so John Wayne probably stole it from us.
Yeah.
Then I took it from him.
Guess he was jealous of your name.
Yes, he was. No, somebody at the studio liked the name. They said, "Hey, well, we have that guy named." Because you think about it, you have a cowboy named Merriam. That's not really. I'm not scared of Merriam,
Right?
but I can be scared of John Wayne with a gun.
It's actually interesting how a lot of actors change their names so they're more famous.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You know what? Sometimes people change the name because they just don't like it, or they change their name because it flows off the tongue better, especially if you have like a really hard name. And people do it all the time. I'm originally from Chicago, and we had a governor. I remember before I moved to Texas, he was running for governor. His name was Blagojevich. And when I saw his name, I said, nobody's going to vote for him because they can't. Really, because that's how people are. But, he got elected, and, people say his name like it's one syllable, Blagojevich. They say it. They know him now, for not good reasons in a lot of cases. But the fact that, they actually said his name, they know his name, and it's very familiar to people say it like it's no one's like, oh, yeah, Blagojevich. But no, back during that time, nobody was saying that.
Since this movie's based off a true story, if you remember hearing about this when it happened in May of 1998 with Stephen Glass.
I do remember some of it. I had to go back and check the story and everything, but I do remember that magazine was I really like politics. I'm really big into politics. So that magazine was The Republic. The Republic was something that people use as a staple of how to prove something. Even in the movie, they had, I think it was Bernstein, he was actually saying the New Republic said this. So it was like truth. If they said it, then it had to be true. This is the way social media works now. I read it on the internet, so
exactly.
I thought it was very interesting, even with the movie, the fact that for such a prestigious magazine that they had little to no fact checking. And I didn't know, after looking at the movie, the loophole with fact checking is that when it comes from like an interview or something I personally did, the facts only come from what I write in my notes.
Which is very flawed, and I hope after watching the movie they change that.
I would have hoped by now, now they said if you interview somebody, you should take a picture, which probably not always you can do just because of, people know who you get your sources from. But right. The fact that there's probably a little bit more fact checking that you can do. And we have the internet now, so it's a lot of ways you do it. There's no way that $1 million company, like in the movie, could do such a big payout and then they don't have a website. They don't really have multiple lines of phone. It's almost impossible. People with 3 employees have a very big website with multiple lines. So a multi-million-dollar company with just one line and no good website, that's kind of like unheard of. But like they said in the movie, he said that I really don't know anything the internet. I don't know about computers. And during that time, people really didn't know it was a kind of a new thing. So you can get away with stuff like the guy did, like Glass did. He's creating websites and getting his brother. You could do that and nobody would be none the wiser. And if no one has a reason to question you, probably the first time he did it and he got away with it, which is usually how stuff is, he said, wow, nobody questioned me. Let me try to do it one time. Because I can imagine all his stories like that. He got to do some story, actually, real. Did it the second time and he got away with it. So it became normal. When people get in trouble, they don't normally just decide one day I'm going to rob a bank. It's usually little incremental stuff. Back in the day, when people used to get newspapers, they had the newspaper stack. The papers cost $0.25, but you just put the quarter in there and it's a stack of papers and you just pull out your paper. At some point, somebody's going to say, I need 2 papers, and they just take 2.
Right.
And they got away with it. And it's like, oh, okay. The next time they go to the Sunday paper, which is like, well, back in the day was $1. I put in $1, but I really want 2 papers, and I took 2 papers away. So stuff like that starts with little things. So he probably fabricated names and, dates here and there. And then it just got to the point to where I think it's like 23 of his big stories, which is completely made up.
Right. It's crazy. It's interesting how if this film took place today, it wouldn't have gone on because they would have seen through everything.
But you know what the funny thing about that I find very interesting is the fact that this movie has a license to a lot of privilege. So in their mind, why would they check? Well, he said it's true, and that's what it is. And they just kind of went with that. And a lot of times stuff happens today with just a lot of privilege, and people just like, if it's in the New York Times, it must be right.
Or Fox News or CNN.
Yes, if it is. MSNBC, it must be correct. And because we live in such a partisan, when I was growing up, they used to have a rule law. It's called fair and balance, where you had to do, if you did one opposing view, you have to present the other side. That's just the way the news worked, And if you go back into like the 80s, you'll see a lot of those counterbalance shows because they have to present both sides. When Murdoch had the law changed, his argument was different. But his was because he wanted to create specialty television. He wanted to create that television that was narrowed to one particular point of view. I look at a lot of news. I like politics. I look at CNN, I look at Fox. When you look at Fox, it's in a different world from MSNBC. It really, when stuff happens, I go and look at both of them and see what their points of view are. And they're like living in 2 total different universes. The cadence of the reporters, how they respond to stuff, how they highlight stuff and not highlight stuff. Now, CNN tries to take the route of we're in the middle, we're trying to report news. They're trying to take like they're the commercial NPR. Yeah, we're the commercial NPR. We just say how it is. And sometimes they push people to certain, they kind of push people in certain directions, A lot of times more toward a liberal perspective. Fox obviously pushes people to a conservative, and MSNBC is completely liberal all the way to the liberal as it can be. I look at NPR because NPR does give a more factual, but the other one, the C-SPAN is just facts. It's just fact. This is what happens, and it's probably a better retelling of exactly how it is. So these days, if something like that happened in the movie, you have multiple ways of story. Even if somebody breaks a story, all those people, other people are going to fact check the story. And there's multiple ways to try to find information about people.
I thought it was interesting how Billy Ray, the writer of the film, went about telling the story, writing the story, and didn't really attack or defend Stephen Glass, but instead showed him a way that you can't help but relate to him and see things from his perspective.
When Billy Ray wrote this, he said the first initial part of writing it was very factual. They went back and added the whole thing in the classroom to give a different perspective to the story, but he wrote it very factual. But see, Billy Ray has always also written other kind of real factual things. Like, for example, he did Hunger Games. There's some action in it, but it's very kind of factual about what happened. The Color of Money. He's written some things that are very, very factual, like this will happen, which is his style of writing. Obviously, he was trying to bring empathy to Stephen. But at the same time, although he's bringing empathy to Stephen, he also was showing Stephen to be a manipulator.
Right.
He manipulate people individually. The amount of stuff that's going on in his head for you to remember all the stuff, like when the young lady was at the party and he got that Diet Coke for her, wrote a name on it. She's like, well, why did you do so? Well, because you didn't like the way Diet Coke tastes after a couple of days, whatever. She said, I said that a couple of years ago, but it's in his mind. So it's like he's constantly manipulating people around him. I would really like to know what was his background. Where did he come from? What was his family? What was the makeup of that? Because there would have to be some reason. It's like being part of a really big family and you got 8 pieces of chicken, but it's nine of you all, and your mother calls and says time for dinner, and you say, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and everybody else goes to get chicken. You're not going to get a piece of chicken. You get to the table like, what? All the chicken go? Well, so what is it about his background as a person that makes him feel like he needs to manipulate situations and everybody around him? Like all those papers calling, it's like, oh, it's nothing. Why? So now you're putting things in people's head like, why is he talking to these people? Why is he talking to those people? And it could be something simple like they was like, hey, we saw that correction that you gave us. Thank you for that. Or your newspaper delivery, has been canceled. Or we want to sell you something. It could be a variety of things. But by not talking to the people and making all these people call it makes them self-importance and also manipulate the people around him. It was just amazing that he was able to get his editor to not do his job by checking stuff. That was really amazing. He had trusted them that much.
What I thought was interesting was how it showed you how much he wanted Pulitzer Prize, I believe is the top.
Pulitzer.
And he wanted it so bad that he was willing to lie for it.
But he said something very interesting.
Some reporters think it's political content that makes a story memorable. I think it's the people you find, their quirks, their flaws, what makes them funny, what makes them human. Journalism is just the art of capturing behavior. You have to know who you're writing for, and you have to know what you're good at. I record what people do. I find out what moves them, what scares them. And I write that down. That way they're the ones telling the story. And you know what? Those kind of pieces can win Pulitzers too.
All type of stories can get a Pulitzer. It doesn't necessarily have to be a true story, as long as it's a great story. So in his mind, I guess he figured, well, get one if I tell a really great story, which is amazing because after he stopped being a reporter, he started writing books, and they were not commercially successful, which is interesting when theoretically he has been writing novels all that time. He had been writing all these novels, even though they would, considered what really happened. He had really been using creative license in his stories all this time where he could have just went in that route, but people probably wouldn't have paid attention to him. But because they thought it was true, it's just like you see something on social media and you see a picture of somebody, like a snapshot in time. I've taken a picture with a lot of famous people. Some people I know, some of the people I've just taken a picture with. Doesn't mean I have this personal relationship with them, but people see the picture and they're like, oh, such and such. Like, no, I was at an event, he was there. He took a picture. There was this thing with I can't think of this rapper's name, but he had took a picture with this trans woman. They just took a picture. She came, they took a picture. And so it turned to a whole thing that he was having this affair with this woman. And it's like, I just went to an event, she was there, I took a picture. That's it. But the internet believed whatever it was. They believed what somebody captured. And people troll the internet all the time. I can hide behind the internet all day long.
Right.
I can sit here and call somebody out, say crazy stuff. I was like, well, I heard this, that, because it's not for real. It's just not real. Social media is not real, but people take it to be truth.
Right. And I feel like that's why the world is where it's at right now and all the craziness.
Yeah. So even with the movie, because they felt like it came from a reputable source in their mind, because he's just one reporter in the whole paper. I can't imagine the whole paper. There was things in there that actually people could like, okay, that's what happened. But I also liked at the end when that second character, I can't think of the character's name, and he said, stop pitching when he was crying. It's
Chuck.
like, yeah, he's like going through this whole point, like, take me to the airport. I don't know what's going to happen to me and everything. He said, stop pitching. It's over with. And he never could really come and just do the honest fess up.
We're not prepared to confirm or deny anything at this time.
What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to read to you a list of suspicious titles, one by one. If you raise an objection to a particular title, we'll fact check it again in the hope of removing it from the list. If you remain silent, we'll assume that piece is fabricated, either partially or entirely. And it'll stay on. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. Hazardous to your mental health. That means it stays on the list of suspicious pieces, fabricated pieces.
We understand. Can we move along?
He said nothing, which means that he didn't want them to check because he knew that there was going to be some issues with that. And I thought that was amazing. And also, when they were all attacking Chuck and telling him you're wrong and everything, he's like, you all don't understand what's going to come down on us, because it's just not his article. It's all of our articles now. We all would be a part of this. So when one person does that, it affects us all, and they couldn't see that because he had manipulated them to be like, feel sorry for me. I just made a mistake. It amazes me when people get in those situations where they made a mistake. Bill Clinton is a good example. Now, what he did on the surface, to anybody else, you really just don't want your wife to find out because, you know, that's obviously an issue between you and your wife. But he ran that all the way. I mean, he took it all the way he possibly. He said, and I remember this clearly, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He said it so poignantly, like he believed it. And then he said it in a way to where it could be no doubt. Because you think about that. Whenever a president says, no matter what political party it is, if the president says it, you think it's true. It couldn't be, you know, even if you don't like him, even if it's not your political point of view, the president said it, so it can't be true. Why would the president say that? Even if you don't like him, well, he said it, that's what it is. And then when he had to come back and say, yeah, we did do something after revealed that there was a dress. If there was never a dress, it would just be his word against hers, and he's the president of the United States versus her. And then she would just kind of be like, you know, shamed to forever. Evidence, videos now, social media, people say stuff, they say things that happen, and somebody said, well, that didn't happen. I think about the Arbery case. If it really wasn't for that video, they probably wouldn't have got convicted. But they had a video, so you can't really, and it's the video you shot. You really can't go against. It's like taking a picture with somebody. It's like, I have no idea who that person is. You right here in the picture with them. This person right here, you're a video. And so this movie, as I think about it more, it is really the idea of where we get information and how much we believe the stuff we believe. But on the flip side of that, when you see stuff like that, it makes you question. It makes you kind of think like, I can't trust nothing. If the president says something, I'm like, let me go check that. I don't believe that's what he said. With the coronavirus, they've gotten to the point that you don't really know what is the truth. You just really don't know. You want to think that they have the general public in best interest, but then somebody has showed something. At the beginning, they had these, when they were first getting the shots, they had the video of these people getting shots, and it was like the press was taking pictures. But I don't know what they were doing, and I don't like to be a conspiracy theory about it, but they had this guy, and it was like taking a video of him getting the shot, but it was nothing in the syringe. So I don't know if they're just doing that just because they, you know, taking pictures. You can't keep giving a man a shot, even though, you know, I can't keep giving you a shot. But the idea that they have a video, now it starts to make you think, well, wait a minute. Well, what's really going on? Now I'm questioning the government. I'm questioning the leaders the people I'm believing around you. I really don't know what's going on, you know? And so you got to get in that space of not really knowing what's going on. And it's not even like, I'm just going to do what I think is best for me, but what really are they doing? Right. You know, what are they not telling me? I'm always interested in what they're not telling me. Why they do this circus right here, what are they doing behind my back that I have no idea about? Then later on, I'll be like, I didn't know they was doing that. It's like with the new variant, Omicron. Now, Omicron is just the Greek letter. It's just a Greek letter. But you tell somebody who don't know that, the Omicron, I mean, that sounds so like, oh my God, Omicron. What is? And so now people, they're going to start making up stuff. And just today, I just read before we came on, they found their first case of it in California. That's going to be an issue right then and there. You know, so I don't know. Who do you believe? The media or the internet? Which one?
Wouldn't you say that media is controlled by the internet, or the media controls the internet?
I think the internet controls the media. And the reason why I say that is because people get pressured into pushing and doing things based off of how people respond to stuff, how many likes that people get. I was just having this conversation about the other day with all the ads we were running for the movie to come out. And if you look at the likes are not a lot, but when I look at the analyticals, like one post had like almost 7,000 people looked at this video, but a very small portion of people actually pushed the button to like. What does that say? They all got the information. They all got it at the same time, but why didn't they push the button to like? Why did they do that? When you look at it, even on YouTube has really great analytics. The ones they let you see, because if they really let you know everything, it should probably blow your mind. They have on there how many new people look at the video and how many return people look at the video. So think how much information they have on you. They know if you are a new person or if you've ever looked at this video before. Think about that. Think about how much information they have on you. So I can tell you this person at this time, I can pin down to the millisecond, when they clicked on it, what they looked at it before they came and looked at this video.
And what's scary is like you try to get on websites. Every once in a while, I'll get on like IMDb or something, and it'll ask for my location.
Yeah, yeah.
Just using Google, it's so weird.
My daughter always wants to download these apps. She's like, I said, let me tell you something. There's nothing free. I know it says it's free, but they are getting something from this by giving it to you. I'm one of the people who like the funny animal videos. I like it. I don't know why. I just think it's funny. So when you look at one, all of a sudden they start sending you a whole bunch of them because you can't think. I'm going through the videos of people and on my stories. I can't imagine 15 people that I know got cat videos. I just, the likelihood of that every single day that they got a whole bunch of cat videos, that's just almost impossible. But because I like this and I spent some time on this cat video, they have metrics that, oh, he liked cat video. So let's start sending a whole bunch of cat video. And it's instantaneous. It's not like you got to wait for the page to load. It's instant. Another cat video. So you get those ads in your email. You look at some shoes. All of a sudden, Dick's Sporting Goods has this 50% off sale of the same shoes you've been looking for. And they say we only use such a very small portion of the internet. So if it was at its full capacity, just think of the things they will manipulate. Now, on some level, I don't necessarily have a problem with being suggested certain things. I really don't. And I do understand that, okay, I'm on Google. I know they're selling my information. I've learned to live with that to a degree. When I started getting robocalls for stuff, when I started getting stuff inside my emails, and then they suggesting things like that, that it makes you a little bit uneasy, that they know me better than I know myself.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. Even going back to the movie, you think about that. He knew what to say to people in the articles to make them just believe him without having to feel like, you know how you read some stuff, so that probably can't be true. He was so in tune with his readers that he was able to say and do stuff in a way that they wouldn't question him.
Right. Which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Even his friends around him, he was able to say and do things, make comments and tell them stories about stuff. And even like real dismissive, like, hey, well, it's just me, to make himself not as important. And it's like, wow. So they're sitting at the meetings all the time, waiting to hear his stories.
Right.
Waiting to hear what does he have to say, because something crazy happens to people. Things do happen to people. I have some things that happen in my life crazy. If I try to tell people, they're like, I don't believe. I said, yes, that exactly happened. But most people's life on a daily basis is very boring. I think about my own life sometimes. People think I be doing these fabulous things, and it's really just computer and paperwork. I do a lot of computer paperwork and Zoom calls every single day. Every now and then we do great things. We shoot stuff. It's always great. People like set life and everything. But the everyday stuff is paperwork and meetings and talking to people like you. So that is where I spend most of my time doing, not necessarily doing. Actually sitting in front of the camera. That's probably a smaller percentage in a month's time than a larger percentage.
I thought the narration, the way Billy Ray has narration of film, quite interesting, how it's almost like you can't really trust what is being narrated, since Stephen Glass is basically the narrator, and you already know not to trust Stephen Glass, but in a way you want to trust since it's the narration.
The truth is, I wrote 14 pieces while Chuck was editing the magazine. And the last of them was the biggest story I ever wrote.
Is anyone interested in hackers? Because I met this kid named Ian Restel, biggest computer geek of all time. He hacked his way into the database of a company called Juked Micronics and posted naked pictures of women and the salary of every Juked employee on Juke's website with a note saying the big bad bionic boy has been here, baby. The guys at Juke decided that it would be cheaper to hire him as a security consultant than it would be to try to stop him. So they met with him last week at the hotel where the National Hackers Conference was taking place. It was the chairman from Juked, Restel, Restel's mother, and Restel's agent. Yes, hackers have agents too. All right, I was at the table with these guys. Restel's just laying out all of his demands. I want a trip to Disney World. I want a lifetime subscription to Playboy, and they're complying with every single word.
I thought it was an interesting take on the movie, and kind of go with what you were talking about of he wrote it so good that they felt like it had to be true.
I think that was really his connection to the story. He was trying to do the whole journalistic thing of being factual about exactly what happens and not necessarily add things in. he tried to tell from that particular aspect. And that's part of the reason why we don't have a lot of personal things about Stephen Glass that I can connect to. Because if you told me some just slight little backstory, or every day he would like eat a buffalo sandwich from some restaurant, we really had no backstory. So all you really had was him at face value and the story he's telling. Even when he had the party at his house, outside of him having all the beer organized and having the soda, there was nothing about the house that was so different. Like, oh, they gave me some insight into who he was. So it was a very factual, and the character he had to build the character in a way, the actor had to play the character in a way that it was just something that you had to believe. So you had no reason not to believe. There was none in the movie that made you not believe what he was saying. And maybe that was the reason why I did it that way, so you wouldn't have any reason not to believe it.
Which is really kind of interesting. And after watching the film over and over and over again, Chuck and Mike, for an example, how when you first watch the movie, you have this such high view of the editor Mike and such a negative view of Chuck because of the narration, the build up on them. But then you go back and watch it, and the only reason Mike was such a great editor was because he was so bad at his job, because he never questioned Stephen. And then Chuck, who was actually better than Mike, was actually doing his job good enough where he could see what didn't line up.
Yeah. Stephen was really the person orchestrating the whole office. And when Chuck came, that's why I feel like he was viewed as a thorn. He was going to be the thorn, because on some level, I think one of the characters said, oh, now we got to actually do some work. Should you have been doing some work before?
Exactly.
You know, if you're doing your job, then it would be no question. Whoever comes, it's like, okay, just changing the guards. They might change the way they look at stuff, but, you know, this would pretty much be where it is. But they felt at that point like, oh, now we got to actually do some work. When he came down to him, and when after he had talked to Stephen, the woman came down to him, and she was like, "Get all, been on shape." He's like, "Look, me and you are going to have to go through this stuff. We are going to have to do this. So it's not like me. You are participating in this too. You have some culpability in this too. You participated on some level in this scam." It's just fascinating, the level of privilege in that, how he was just able to just get away. And nobody ever asks or questioned anything. Even just an inkling about, hey, what happened to that guy that you did the story about, blah, 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 that company. Just a regular, I'm a person, and you did the story, and I would like, some follow, because reporters do it all the time. You tell a big story, and then later on, they follow with the person. They got into an accident. How they doing now? Well, they okay. Nobody did that. Nobody asked about the hacker guy who got all the millions of dollars. No, nobody asked that.
What I find peculiar and interesting is the fact that he manipulated these people so much that the fact that he said the same suspicious thing all the time went over everyone's head. Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? My notes are at home.
But see, that goes back to the whole idea of that we didn't know anything about him outside of the office. Because if we had to know other little things about him, maybe he had a cat, or he had like a whole bunch of pictures of his brother, mother and father not together no more, whatever case it be, we can kind of get some insight in the way he processed matter. But I really don't know how he processed information, or why he kept asking people, "Are you mad at me?" Because that's one of the first things they do to him. Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? But I felt like he was testing the other guy, the first editor. He was testing him when he asked about the minibar. So he knew on some level it was kind of like, I messed up. Let me see how I can manipulate. Let me give him enough information, or let me apologize for something minimal, so where he won't dig any deeper. The thing about anything is that if somebody starts to question something and you don't give them like at least whatever they initially asked about, then they're going to dig deeper, because now the curiosity kills the cat. I'm curious now. Somebody said in passing that there was no mini bars. So that made me start thinking, well, no mini bar. He made this big thing about the mini bars. So let me go back. And he called his own self. And they said, oh, yeah, you could rent a refrigerator. That was enough for him. He didn't need to go any further. They satisfied that, because Stephen was finding ways to cover his tracks. So he knew that you could do, oh, my God, I'm sorry. I just make an assumption about the mini bar, but it really was just refrigerators. And he started to question that, but then question got answered. No need to dig any deeper.
Right.
We can stop right there because he's been proven these 23 other times that he can get it. He made a mistake with the minibar. No problem. We can move forward.
Who did you feel like was the real villain in the story? And the first time we're watching it, we're seeing it from Steven's perspective. Second time, we're kind of seeing it from his co-worker's perspective and everyone else's perspective. But first time, you only know what Steven says or whatever. And so who did you feel like was the villain the first time? Like, did you think something was wrong with Chuck or Adam, or did you kind of suspect Steven all along, his worst enemy?
No, I felt like it was the owner of the magazine. He came across as the villain. When he made them do all the commas.
Right.
Like I say, I mean, that's just really busy work. That's what you do when somebody, they're not doing what you need to do. I'm just going to do some busy work. So he made circle all the commas, and they were going to go over all the corrections together. He came across as the villain, like all these people against him. This age adjustment. I'm older, we're young and we're fiery, and this guy's evil. When it came about, obviously, in my opinion, Steven was, on some level, he was a hero and he was a villain. Antagonist and protagonist all kind of mixed up in one, depending on what perspective that you were taking and what part of the movie was. He was his own worst enemy, but also you felt sorry for him because you felt like this guy's working really hard and they're not really giving him the support that he needs. They need to give him more support because he's really kicking it. He is making it happen, and he's proven over and over time. When Chuck went to that building, he went to that building, that small building, and asked the guy at the desk. The guy said, "We're closed on Sundays." He wanted Steven to come out and say something. He's like, "I'm going to give him one more chance." Because everybody deserves it. Let's go to the restaurant. Go to the restaurant. It's a physical place. You can clearly see it here. But they close at 3 o'clock. And Steven was like, it was at 2:58 when he came and they let us in. Ask them, would they do that? Yes, they probably would do that. It's almost 3 o'clock. You got a big group coming in. That's a lot of money. So you probably would say yes. But 3 o'clock is not dinner time.
No, that's just a late lunch.
Not dinner time. But it also makes me think about, how was he getting his facts? I mean, really, how was he getting like because the internet wasn't really all expansive. So what was he doing? What was he getting his facts about where stuff was? That's just so interesting. How much energy are you spending on? Are you going to these places and doing this, or are you looking at a map? Because there was no internet like that. So where were you getting these facts from? Like if it was across the street, they were over here, they had mini bar. Where are you getting this information from?
That's something I was thinking about too, but it couldn't have been the fact that he got them, because if he had gone to those places, he would have been smart enough to not have cornered himself.
Yes.
So it's interesting, like, well, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so we have to wonder, were you just looking in the, because they did pull out the big yellow telephone book, which I was like, oh, wow, I remember those. They pull out the telephone book, and so a lot of information, telephone book, but telephone books don't necessarily have maps.
Right.
No way to know what's across the street.
They have the address in a telephone book, right?
They have the address, but there's no, if I ask you what's on the corner of 5th and 7th in Seattle, you've never been to Seattle before, even if you knew the Omni Hotel was on that corner, you don't know there's a little candy shop across the street. There's no way for you to know that. And in the telephone book, there's no way to cross-reference the street address per se with how something spatially is. Depending on what your telephone book is listed by categories: air conditioned places, car rental companies, hotels. So they're all kind of listed like that. It's not listed like everything is on 5th Street, everything is on 7th Street. It's listed by categories. Obviously, you didn't know that because you probably don't see a telephone book. Yeah. So it's all category based. So if I'm in the city and I need to know where the photocopy place is, I go to photocopy and it lists all the places. It doesn't tell me exactly where in the city is. I mean, it doesn't address, but if I don't know the city, I have no idea how far it is. So you call the place and say, hey, how far are you? I'm over here. And they say, oh, about 10, 15 minutes, whatever the case may be. Or we're really far away. You need to probably find somewhere closer. So like now, you type in the address and it gives you a picture, the map. It gives you pretty much everything. That's not how telephone books work. It's category based. I mean, you could get a map. You definitely can get a map. You pull out a map. Most young people don't know how to read maps, but you pull out a map and it'll pretty much tell you. But you think about this, all this effort that you have to go through to even kind of inkling of something, you could use that energy to actually write a really good story.
That's
a lot
true.
Of energy. That's a lot of energy.
Especially setting up fake voicemails, making fake business cards, and a fake website.
Yeah. And then getting your brother to say the voice and stuff like that. I mean, that's a lot. Coming up with names. Even, let me tell you something. As a writer, we use, naming energies. We use naming universes, to write our characters. But coming up with names that actually make sense, that's a lot. That takes a lot. So he is over here creating a whole universe of character names, first names and last names, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, agents. He's creating all these people. In my opinion, it's unnecessary. You're creating too many characters. When you create too many characters, they all have to have stories. So you're doing too much, because now if they don't answer the telephone, first his thing was, I only got voicemail, so I left and they would call me back. But then it was, well, I never called them. They always called me. So he had to keep changing it because he had too many characters. If you're trying to keep your story tight, you need to have less characters. So there's less people, because if you give a company name, now they got to have an address. Now they got to have people who work there. Then they got to have what they make. You create too many things.
Right.
He really should have been called a long time ago, honestly. He really should have been called a long time ago. And I wonder about the guy who actually called him. What made him question, out of all those stuff, you read this stuff, why this particular article? Because we read lots of stuff all the time. We don't necessarily go fight chat. Even if it's just something simple, you don't necessarily go every time you read something like, oh, I never heard of it. Let me find this company. You just take it from face value. But what was it about in this particular instance made him say, I'm going to dig a little deeper? Even on the internet, how many times have somebody's, article about something that you Googled it and said, oh, Hasbro is making a new line of G.I. Joe, man. You just take it at face value and just keep going on. Right. We all know Hasbro exists, but we wouldn't be, if some other fictitious company was doing G.I. Joe, I wouldn't be like, let me look up that company. I would never do that. Hasbro making G.I. Joe. And it could be all fake. Hasbro saying, we're not making any more G.I. Joe. But the article says it is, so y'all must be doing it.
Another thing I was wanting to touch on was the actor who played Stephen Glass, Hayden Christensen. There's a lot of controversial, I feel like, about him from the Star Wars prequels, and this film came out during that time.
Yes.
And so I was kind of curious, like, how did you feel like he did acting this character overall? Did you think he was a good pick or not really?
I thought he was a good pick. As I think about that, I think part of the reason why he did that, which is because they're looking for places to kind of give them range. A good example of that is Will Smith with 6 Degrees of Separation. He had never done anything like that, and he's looking to kind of expand his range. The only problem with doing like superhero type movies, like Star Wars type things, is that what happens is you get typecast. So another good example of somebody getting typecast, the guy from Star Trek. I can't think of his name.
Chris Pine?
No, not Chris Pine. The older guy who plays the captain on a TV show. Patrick Stewart.
Okay.
Patrick Stewart is a theatrically trained actor from Europe. He's not just some guy who went to community workshop or nothing wrong with community workshop. Some guy who did like some acting course online. This guy is a theatrically trained, and what he's known for is playing Captain Picard on Star Trek. Can't seem to get past that. And so this guy in Shattered Glass playing Stephen Glass, he is known for the Star Trek, but not for this movie. And maybe not from the other stuff he did. But the Star Wars, he'll always be known for. And sometimes you want to try this as an actor, you want to do stuff that kind of like expand, hoping that people can see you in a different light. I think I saw him in a different light with this. It was something that I wouldn't expect for him to be like, hey, I want to do that. it was a different type of role that convincing. His character on Star Wars is very driven. He has exactly what he wants to do. You know, he holding grudges. He has an idea what he thinks life is about. He's young, and young people in the Superman stage. This guy, he seemed to be dealing with some inadequacies and some other things in his personal life that he didn't know how to counteract. And so it came out in manipulating situations. It's almost like the bully. You look kids in the bully. The bully has a lisp, but he beats up everybody, so they won't talk about his lisp. So this guy is, I'm going to try to appease everybody and manipulate the situation so they never have to dig into my own personal inadequacies. So I'm managing, like he telling this receptionist lady, oh, that's a nice lipstick you got on. Come on, that lady almost be your mama. why you flirting with that lady? You know, why you doing it? But she would do whatever he asked her to do.
Right.
You know, the only person I was curious is I can't think of the young lady that he put the name on the soda. I never felt like she really bought into what he was doing. So he did the whole thing about the guy almost kissed him and everything. I didn't understand what he was trying to do. Was he trying to? I feel like on some level he's trying to seduce her or try to get her to be with him, because she was kind of like shaking her head like, what? What? I didn't understand why. What was his point in manipulating her? I never understood that.
Oh, the blonde woman?
Yes.
I kind of felt like she was more attracted to him than he was to her.
Mm.
I mean, I could be wrong.
Even if that's true, if you believe that somebody, if you think she likes you, or maybe that was the whole gay thing to put question in her mind that, okay, I might be gay, or I'm attracted. He kept saying I'm attracting these gay guys. That's a little confusing. So if I have a woman that likes me, I'm not going to do anything that might her thinking I'm gay. I don't want her to think that on no level, because then that could be none of me and her.
Right.
But if he is trying to keep somebody from being close to him in that particular way, then I put some doubt in your mind that, oh, he might be gay, so I can't pursue that. But she shook her head at him a couple of times, and I actually thought she was going to play a bigger role in saying, oh, he is not right, he's lying or this. But she seemed to kind of go with everybody else, because it was points in time where she just seemed to be kind of questioning why he was doing stuff.
Right.
You know, she was just kind of questioning, but she never really took it further than that.
Well, I felt like every time she questioned him, she felt like it was his parents' fault, or it was the fact that he's stressed with doing law school while doing this. Like, I felt like she kept coming up with excuses in her head to believe him.
Mm-hmm. I guess if you give people enough you get them basic information about you, that's all they really can use. Then when something happens, that's what they use. Because I honestly felt like, and which it could be about design. If we ever talked to Billy Ray, we had this conversation. What's about design that you kept his personal life and his business life separate? That those two never really crossed. Even with using his brother to be on the phone, his brother never manifested in any particular way in the story. There was no, my brother came up here or anything like that. Although he mentioned it to the intern and they had a slight conversation about it, but there was really no, we didn't see his brother. We didn't see his parents or even his friends.
Right.
Outside of work, we really didn't see that. And so if you're trying to create a character where you want to believe the elements that you give them, then he did a good job of creating a universe that we only can pull facts from the universe.
True. Was there anything else you wanted to add about the movie or anything?
I thought it was good overall. I really did. I thought it was I think it's something really that they need to either do a remake of that now, or just have a conversation about ethics with journalists, and what, just the whole ethics of sourcing and where you get information from, and what is, when you look at like pundits talk on like CNN and other places, they quote sources and they said verifiable sources. What makes a source verifiable? I mean, really, what is that? I mean, anybody can embellish, even if you get somebody from the White House and they say, well, the president, he was having a bad day. Was he really having a bad day, or just that moment when you said something to him, he snapped at you? Does that mean he's having a bad day? Or like you hear stories about people in the White House, and it's like, oh, everybody's in uproar when Trump was in the White House. Was it, the White House is not that big, but it's also small. So it's sectioned out to the people who work with the president every day and the people who work over here, work at the West Wing and stuff like that. So if your department of 3 or 4 people can talk to the people in the White House, does that mean they're having a bad day? It's all suggestive. It's very suggestive. So I'm always interested in knowing what's a verifiable source. What really is that? Or is it just somebody speaking off off the books? Is what does that really mean? I think that's a conversation that we really need to have now in the political landscape we are now with journalists and just media in general. How we source things, and if that loophole still exists. I would like to know if that loophole really exists.
True. Did you feel like the movie overall was made with passion and care?
Yes, but like I said before, I would like to understand his thought processes by keeping them in that particular universe and just not really getting to know anything else outside of that, which will kind of probably sway us one way or the other. But all the way to the end, you were just believing what was told to you, which I kind of goes back to his whole idea of who he was in the story. You believe in what's told to you.
Right.
So I don't have any other reason not to believe that the stories are correct. I have no other reason to believe that what he's telling me is true until Chuck went to the building and I mean, you really can't get past that. I mean, really, there's a lot of things you can get past, but physically going with someone and seeing it, you can't really get past that particular thing.
Exactly. I mean, to some certain degree, he had to know that he lost.
But the funny thing about it is that me personally, I don't think I would have went on that journey with him. I don't think I would have gotten in a car and drove all the way over there. I mean, really, it's and I hate to say it, it's almost like a crackhead move. It's like the crackhead stealing something out of your house, and then it's like, somebody stole my TV. Well, let me help you find it. You helped me find the TV you stole? I mean, really? That's really it's kind of crazy. So we're gonna go over to this place that you wrote about so I can see for myself. Okay, I'm gonna get in the car with you. Why would you do that to yourself? I would say, hey, I got somewhere else to go. Won't you just go over there yourself? And whatever. And I'm gonna say, look, let me be straight up with you. Let me tell you what happened, so you don't go over there. Because if you go over there, that's a lot of information you're gonna have that you didn't have if you didn't go over there. It's just almost like when the first editor called over to the hotel. If they had said that they don't rent refrigerators, then that would have called him to what's going on. Right. But if I would have had to say something to the guy to keep him from going to the place where they had the convention, because he would go there, he would see for himself that it was a lie. And once you open that door, people start opening up other doors. So, but I would really be interested in having a conversation with Billy Ray. Like, what was your thought process in the writing of that?
Yeah.
Also, too, very important thing, when somebody writes something, and I do this, my interpretation as a director, I interpret stuff differently than a writer may have written it. So I get a script or a project and I'm looking at it and I read what they say, but I might have a different interpretation of what that character is doing and saying. So this could be director's creative license for how he saw the character, or it could be really the way Billy Ray wrote it. Because then when you look at the Hunger Games and Color of Money and some other stuff, some of those characters, the way they're well-written characters and they come across the screen very well. The same writer, or this is directors, if Billy Ray was the director and he wrote it. So is this him just what he would do? Because the Hunger Games and the other ones, he just wrote it. He didn't direct it. So that sounds like to me a lot of interpretation of the director versus what is actually written, or how he saw it versus what the director outside of him would have done.
I always find it more interesting movies with someone that wrote and directed it. Like how they view their own work.
So I believe filmmaking is a cooperative process. I believe that when you decide to do something visually like that, that you want to try to get input from a variety of different perspectives. As a director, I do have a vision of how I want to see something. If I read a script, if I wrote it, or part of the writing process, I have a vision how it is. But I try not to be like so one-sided, like it got to be just like this, because I remember this. I think about this one thing from the aspect of writing is that I want to produce media that people want to see and enjoy, not just me. So I don't want to just rely on my own understanding because, the way I might write something, I like science fiction. Even though most of the stuff I do is dramatic and thriller based, I personally like science fiction. So I'm trying to write to a broader audience of people that would like it in general, not just the people who like science fiction. Because that's not really, unless I'm trying to write a science fiction movie. So I think a lot of times when you can be very narrow-minded, it worked for some people. Some people are very narrow in their vision, but I think that when you open it up to other people's ideas and insights, because they're all seeing different perspectives. They come from different ways of looking at things, how characters are, what they wear, how they light it. Just they have different perspectives. So if you listen to what they have to say, you don't necessarily have to take all of it, but at least you have the information of how they view it to try to make the characters better. Even actors usually have different ideas of how they interpret. They see characters differently. It's important that the director and the actor are on the same page, because if they're not, what happens is that when you're forcing an actor to do something they feel uncomfortable about, you can see it. They come across the screen every single time. Music videos, commercials, films, whatever. If you make them do something they don't feel comfortable doing, it's going to come across the screen. So it's better to find a way of something that makes everybody feel comfortable, where they all kind of meet in the middle. So the compromise, okay, I see red shoes, you see black shoes. Let's do red with a black stripe in it. Now they're walking and they feel confident. Instead of, no, they got to have red shoes. And then they walk like, I feel uncomfortable with red. You know what I'm saying? So it's a compromise, cooperative process.
For anybody that's interested in learning more about you or listening to you, where can they listen to you at or find more stuff out about you?
You can pretty much Google me, John Wayne S. III, John Wayne SIII. That is the same for every single platform, from Facebook, Instagram to LinkedIn. Wherever it is, it's pretty much the same thing. Even my website is johnwaynesii.com. So you can pretty much find me the same thing. I try to make it consistent so people can find you generally. Or you can Google my company, London Town Pictures, LONDYN Town Pictures. Like I said before, I do have a movie that came out December 1st, Ebony Hustle, which exclusively be on Tubi TV for 2 weeks. And on the 14th, to go to Amazon, Vudu, and all other platforms. And I have 2 features that I'm working with in the new year and a television series. So, and then I also have a film that I did a couple years ago called Red All Over, which is about a young boy who accidentally shoots a girl. So it's told from the shooter and the victim's perspective. And a lot of times you don't get that. What happens is that when somebody shoots somebody, you get to like, oh, that person's the worst person in the world. But you have to think about it. Most young kids don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to shoot somebody today. There's a process. There's some things they go to. So the tagline to that movie is, before you choose a side, understand both. So you can check it out pretty much anywhere. That's pretty much on every single platform there is. He's even on YouTube. So everybody can see the movie.
And what's the television series called?
The show we're doing called The Show That Never Was. This is really a makeup for filmmakers. A lot of times, you think about this, each year there are thousands of television show pilots that get shot, and only very few actually get picked up. This is the place where all those television pilots that didn't get picked up, we air those. So we have like a host, a girl and a guy. They do like an introduction of the pilot, and they show the entire pilot, and they do a wraparound at the end and kind of talk about it. So it's the place where all the pilots who wish to go somewhere or who never could get anywhere, this is where they come to.
That's pretty cool.
I like that.
Yeah. Real quick before you go, I actually I'm going to be interviewing a director up soon. And since you're a director, how would you want someone to interview you? Because I'm trying not to stress about it too much, but I don't want to do a bad interview, but I don't know like a good balance because I don't want to ask a bunch of generic questions, but like I'm not really sure good balance of asking questions and resources to use to do research to write really good, thought provoking, great
So,
conversation questions.
so when the one thing about anything, when you're in this, you're doing somebody, you really should go for trying to find something that you both can connect with. You know, if you both like thrillers or you like a TV show or something that you both understand, you have the basis of, like, for example, I don't look at Game of Thrones, but a lot of people do. So, what are you looking at on TV? What's your favorite film? Find those ways of connecting with them. Then that way, they'll give you an opportunity to kind of figure out, okay, this person likes, like, I like Doctor Who, you know, and so somebody else who likes Doctor Who and knows what Doctor Who is, then you can connect that way. And after that, the conversation kind of goes natural because, you know, you guys have somewhere that you can connect with. But also looking at the stuff they've done in the past, trying to understand why did they just use this character, what was the process of picking this particular person, you know, or their philosophy in how they structure characters. As a writer, we do a lot of character development. I give characters birthdays, signs, favorite colors, brothers and sisters. I do all those things because just like you, as a person have rules, characters have too. If not, they'll just be doing anything. You know, that's a lot of time people, when you can look at stuff and it's like, why are they doing that? There's nothing in that character's history to make them do that because they didn't do enough character development. You know, so you want to give your characters rules. So if you look at what they've done, find out what things that interest them, and kind of like go over why they made those choices. Directors like that. I like people to understand why they made those choices. You know, what made them go that route? What made them not go the route? Because you're like, well, why did you go this way? I didn't see it that way, and this is the reason why. Once you get a director, especially if they're a talker, I'm a talker, and you kind of find an interest to where they really like, then you should have an easier path to getting them to open up, and the questions should kind of flow all the way through.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to us reviewing Enemy on console in the future and just catching up.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for reaching out, and to all you listeners, stay focused and determined.
Thank you. I hope you have a blessed day.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.